getting into the second topic, cognitive models of depression. Okay, so you see, really in this approach, we're following the guide, same topics as the guide, we're just packaging it in a more interesting way, I think. So we're looking at Beck's cognitive theory, and the second topic is on rumination and response styles theory. But if you like, you could simply remove that and do a couple of lessons on Beck's cognitive theory. Rumination and response styles is included in there because it's a more simple, straightforward explanation than Beck's. Beck's is quite tricky. So it might give students who struggle with Beck's a second option. So we're looking at Beck's cognitive theory. They should know what it is and how cognition might cause depression according to Beck. Really, we want them to be able to summarize the theory. All right, we can compare their notes with a partner. I've got a wheel spinner there if you want to do a random check and call a student by random and get them to show you your plan or explain their plan to the class if you like. Biological explanations, Kahoot, there's the review. And today we're going to understand Beck by linking it to the rock. I do have some sort of ethical quandaries with this when we're kind of analysing a real person. I think the rock will be okay. He's been very open about his depression. All the stories, all the things we used are from quotes from him that he's done in magazine articles. So I feel like it's kind of okay. Alright, so I made a little video. There's the blog post or there's the video, or you could explain it yourself. And there's even just, if you don't want to do that, there's just a very short snippet in the book. But students need to know a little bit about the rock's story and his events and his childhood and depression to complete the activities today. So very simple, Beck's cognitive theory. We begin with the cognitive triad. Now, these are actually symptoms of depression, but most people talk about them as causes, and it would be accepted in the IB exam, I'm sure, since it usually is, that they are potential causes. So it's a nice, straightforward way to begin, right? These negative thought patterns cause depression. Nice and easy, okay? Now, let's apply this to the rock, right? Again, just to get them thinking more deeply about the cognitive triad, can they come up with possible examples, things he might have been thinking after those two life events? Then we actually get into the real theory, okay? The combination of schemas, stresses, and personality types. Now, the first two are pretty straightforward. Schemas and stresses. We develop maladaptive schemas in childhood, and then life stresses as an adult, activate these, and then this leads to the cognitive triad. The personality types is really interesting, but it can be quite tricky to bring those in. Essentially, your schemas are consistent with your personality type, and then so different stresses will activate it different depending on your personality type. It's okay if you gloss over the personality types because it's a bit too full on for students. Okay, but I do think if they can, if your students aiming for 7s, if they can comprehend all this content, it'll put them at an advantage. Oh, I can't watch this clip without crying. Anything with fathers and sons, that's my early maladaptive schemas at play there. Gets me going. It's just a good real life example. Cliff notes, Will's dad comes back and then bails on him again. So according to Beck, most early maladaptive schemas are about abandonment, or there's another one, I forget it, but abandonment is a big one. All right, so it's the example from Will. All right, then we explain personality types, so we're just summarizing the theory here, and then we can link it to the rock. Now we're going to try to take students through this step by step. So first one, maladaptive schemas. What type of schemas do they think he might have developed? And they simply circle them. Now we go to stresses. The life stressor triggers schemas. So what schemas do they think could have been triggered by his injury and his divorce? All right, and then we go, what personality type do we think he is? It's hard to say. He could probably fit both. So you get them to choose one. Now, can they put it all together? Now, instead of just writing a simple summary, I thought it might be better to make a video. And they can watch this later when they're reviewing for their exams. I realized this is a really challenging thing to do. So I thought, I think as a general rule, anytime we get students to do something, we should do it ourselves. Not only does that create an example for them to follow, but it also helps us figure out if what we're asking is realistic, if our instructions are clear, and if our scaffolds are correct, and it gives the example. So this was my plan. I did Jim Carrey. This is adapted from an old assessment I did with this New Zealand curriculum I teach, where they were given the case study and had to explain why they developed depression. Anyway, that's my plan, and here's my video. It's a lot going on. I wouldn't show this to the class because they might not all need to see it, but those that struggle and aren't sure may want to use the link. All right, that's that. I doubt they'll get to finish the video for homework, so I would imagine that will be their homework. Or if they've done the video, they could do the notes. Now, I've included some lines here just from the literature. I think this is really just for teacher reference. You know, I didn't want to go overboard with this stuff in the textbook. I had to really simplify it, but I wanted to give you some extra sources and some more academic reading, since most, I think, introductory textbooks, when they talk about Beck's theory, don't really delve into the sociotropic autonomous stuff. So that's Beck's theory, and then we're going to contrast that in the next lesson with rumination and response styles theory.